Well said, Eric.
Just a moment.
Okay,
You should be good to go, Mr. Chairman.
all right.
Yep, you're good to go.
Good evening. I would like to call the February 11th, 2026 TPZ meeting to order. Please rise and pledge allegiance to the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next, roll call of commissioners.
Commissioner King,
Here.
Commissioner Fox,
Here.
Commissioner Harpy,
Here.
Commissioner Minor,
Here.
Commissioner Pascarelli,
Here.
Chairman Sobiesky,
Here.
Commissioner Woods, Commissioner Hoffman,
Here.
Commissioner Rice Davis.
Woods is here today.
Yep.
You're all set.
And I'll just add that Commissioner Woods is online, and I think was just muted at the point, but I think I saw him say here too, but he is here
Yes, yes.
online.
Okay.
We're all set. We don't need to seat any alternates.
You do not.
All approval of the agenda?
No changes.
No changes, very good. Public participation, the first round. Anybody wishing to speak from the public wishing to speak on items not on the agenda?
No one online has their hand raised, Mr. Chairman.
Please state your name and address for the record, Bill.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
William McCarthy or Bill McCarthy, 206 Churchill Drive. I'm sorry that the applicant withdrew their meeting this evening for the hearing. But there was other issues that I'm concerned about.
Wait a minute, Bill, you're speaking on stuff that's on the agenda.
Oh, well, no, that was just, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, all right. A couple of properties that are starting to get to the point of dereliction, not dereliction. They're getting bad.
Derelict is what you're looking for.
Okay.
Okay.
The Price Chopper Plaza and up where Modell's and Party City used to be. These are, I'm not sure what they're zoned at this point, but I think the town or the planning and zoning people have to try to encourage developers to come in and do something with those properties. I know that there's over in Manchester, they had the Manchester Parkade that they eventually tore down, and it was derelict for 20 years, 30 years, and nothing happened with it. Excuse me. I just think that we have to become a little bit more proactive as far as getting developers in here to do something. I'm not saying that we need another supermarket. I'm not saying that we need another Sage Allen or whoever those companies are that sell clothes and stuff like that. But we have to think, what are we going to do with these properties, and how can we better utilize them for the overall welfare of the town?
So are you saying that there's like clothes and stuff scattered around in there? Is that what you're questioning?
I'm sorry, what?
Are you questioning the fact that by the boxes, there's clothes and stuff dumped in a pile? Is that what you're questioning? For your Price Chopper,
Yeah.
is that what you're questioning, or are you questioning the vacancy of the buildings?
No, the vacancy of the buildings.
Oh, okay.
That the plazas themselves are gonna be empty.
Right.
They're just gonna be acres and acres of empty buildings. I know the state has a piece of property right next to Price Chopper that is a mystery building that I don't know, have any idea what they do up there. But it's possible that we could even think of taking one of those plazas and doing something in a municipal way to help with our municipal needs. And then the only other one that I know of that I think needs immediate attention as far as zoning is the Keeney building. We have to make a decision what we're gonna do with that. You know, I know the guy's still paying taxes on it and that data mail is in there doing some stuff. But we're not a manufacturing town anymore. We do have manufacturing, but downtown Newington is not a manufacturing hub. I guess that's it. We need to, you know, look at the whole picture and work towards a solution. Thank you.
Paul, can you address the Keeney building? That's part of the center.
Yep, so the Keeney building, again, is privately owned,
Right.
as noted. Again, I anticipate that the developers do have a plan for that. Again, it's going to be a process that goes through. They did present what their original idea was with the building previously to this commission and to the Economic Development Commission and to the town. But, you know, I think that they're still working on their vision for the site. And as soon as they have their vision, they will bring it forward.
If I remember correctly, there was 3 or 4 visions they brought forward and they couldn't get the funding for them.
Yeah, again, they didn't share financials, of course, because that is a private type of issue, individual property development owner, but yes.
So, and then the other one is, as far as that mystery building with the DOT has, that's the Record Retention Center,
Oh, okay.
okay? It used to be located up in New Milford and they moved it down here. So anything that's old plans and stuff, the original ones are in there. If you need to get a copy, you send an email,
Oh,
they
okay.
will print it for you and charge you.
Good.
Okay?
High security. All right.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions? Okay, any other comments from the public?
Nobody online has their hand raised.
Thank you. Move on to the zoning officer's report. Does everybody have time to look at it and review it? Any questions for Eric?
No questions?
No.
Next is remarks by commissioners. Any remarks by the commissioners? Okay. This is a public hearing, but the person that Mr. Snow or who was it here? Andrew Moran has requested a postponement or extension rather of time because they need to get more documents in here. So it is open. He did send a letter to Paul.
Yep.
So any questions that the general public has, we'll take and Paul will pass them on to Attorney Moran. Any questions that the commission has, I would appreciate if you could hold till next week when they're here. Okay. Any other discussions, Paul?
Nope. So, Mr. Chairman, what I'd recommend now is the reading again of the application.
Okay.
Again, to officially reopen the public hearing since it was continued to this date, or continue the public hearing officially. And then I can read the applicant's email in, and then we can go from there.
Very good.
You want to put the title? Just put the title. There you go.
Okay, just from here, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so this is petition TPZ 25-28 site, I'll read it from here, because this. Site plan for a 41-unit rental apartment home development under CGS section 8-30G, affordable housing application at 103 Lewis Street in the PD Plan Development Zone. Applicant Premier Real Estate Services 2 LLC. Owner Innate Investments LLC, contact Andrew R. Moran Esquire. So the motion is to continue the
Well,
public hearing.
so what I recommend is, what I'll do is,
Oh,
so-
you have to, okay.
yeah, I'll give a little background now. So just for the record, so everyone kind of remembers too, but for the record, that the public hearing was opened on January 28th and continued to today, February 11th. The applicant did submit an email, the applicant's counsel, Andrew Moran, Attorney Moran, and it's on behalf of Premier Real Estate Services 2 LLC. I am requesting a continuance of the public hearing from February 11th to the commission's February 25th meeting. The continuance is requested to provide my team more time to prepare a final supplemental materials package. Then please let me know if you have any questions. And that was from Andrew R. Moran. Again, staff does recommend the continuance of the public hearing to the 25th to give the applicant the time to revise their plans. They're doing so and moving forward with those revisions. And they did indicate directly to me that they would not be here tonight, as they are not. Again, staff does recommend that CPZ grant this request and defer kind of the questions of that for the applicant to be able to respond. Typically for our public hearing procedures, when you do have a public comment, you do give the applicant a chance to respond directly to it. They will have a chance, of course, to respond at the next public hearing. Again, everyone, this will be, subject to your motion, continued to the 25th. But again, there would be time for them to respond to any comments at that time as well too, or any comments you give to them on the 25th.
Do we discuss before we have the motion?
So you pretty much have the public hearing open right now.
Yep.
If you have members of the public who have showed up that you would like to give them an opportunity to speak, you can do so. But the key thing is, again, the applicant is not here. There's no chance for a back and forth, and that anything would have to be held to that time for a response from the applicant.
Any questions from commissioners? Commissioner Herpy?
Yeah, just one issue that I'm concerned about, and I don't know if we can get into this or wait till they come back. Is the letter sent out January 7th, 2026 from MDC to the individuals that proposing the project. They talk about the sewer system. And it seems like it's a very complicated issue for MDC. It's a friendly letter. They indicate the cost to the applicant to resolve it, but they're not going to entertain anything according to Mr. Levesque. At this time, the MDC cannot permit any additional or new connections to the MDC sewer system unless compensating efforts, blah, blah, blah. Can you touch on that? Just for the
Yep. So what I would recommend is I would actually, if we're gonna that would be a good question to kind of ask the applicant, say, where are you at with that? What's the impact on your application? That's something that could be deferred to the next meeting. And then, of course, we would send the applicant the recording of this meeting. And that would be a topic that you would like them to touch on at the next.
Okay, fair enough.
All right, there's no other comments. I'll entertain a motion to carry the meeting on for another week, or another meeting.
I'll move it.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in
Yep.
favor?
So, Mr. Chairman, sorry to interrupt. The motion, if you're going to just make the motion continue, it should be specifically to the date. That's again, why we have this hearing tonight. When we continue it to a date, you go to that date and then it goes to the next. So the motion should specifically state when the public hearing is continued to.
Move to continue the public hearing for application TPZ 25-28 to February 25th, 2026, regular meeting.
Second.
I moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, Paul?
Okay.
Okay, next on the, sorry.
No, it's taking my job.
Okay, next, approval of the minutes. I'd like to have a motion to approve the minutes.
Chairman.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion, corrections? Commissioner Fox?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did read them, but I'm still going to abstain, but I noticed, I think it was this one here, that there was some discrepancy. Yeah, Commissioner Hoffman was seated for Commissioner Fox, that's fine. Commissioner Rice Davis was seated for Commissioner Rice Davis. That should be changed to whoever she was seated for.
She was seated for,
That would have been
Chris.
Chris.
okay.
Okay.
All right, so Maureen, you'll make
Yes, yeah.
that change, thank you. Any other changes? All right, hearing none, all in favor? With the,
Aye.
with the, most, with the changes,
Mhm.
all right?
Aye.
Abstain.
I'll abstain as well.
Well, anybody
Mr. Chair.
opposed? I'm sorry,
I'll abstain as well, Mr. Chair. I was absent.
what do you say, I can't hear?
Uh,
He's going to
Commissioner Minor is abstaining.
Yep, yes, okay,
got it.
Commissioner Minor also abstains. All right, I'll start with that, I believe. TPZ regular minutes from 1/26/28. Okay, new business, Paul.
All right, so tonight, because we have a moment to discuss, due to the deferment, I wanted to bring up, House Bill number 8002 from the November special session, Public Act 25-1, an act concerning housing growth. So this is the follow-up to 5002 that was vetoed. And again, this came out of the special session. It is a, 100 and some odd pages, 40 some odd sections. There's a lot to this bill. But there's two items that I kind of wanted to focus on tonight, two specific sections that kind of will require more immediate action from the TPZ with our regulations. So the first one of the bill is section 16. So I kind of put this up here in front of you. This just shows you what was changed in it. We're going to go to the next slide. I don't want you to have to read all of this, but you can see it kind of took a may type of provision and then moved it into a shall. And then we may allow for a secondary type thing. So next one. So what it really is, on or after July 1st, 2026, any zoning regulation adopted or amended pursuant to section 8.2 as amended by this act shall allow for the development of a transit community middle housing development as defined in section 11 of this act, or a mixed use development on any lot that is zoned for commercial or mixed use development, subject only to summary review as defined in section 8-2R as amended by this act. And then it has a second section. The municipality may allow for development of a transit community middle housing development on any lot that allows for residential use, subject to only such review. So tonight I'm going to focus on the shall, what we must do. So that is a transit community middle housing development. So next slide. So what is a transit community middle housing development? So that means a residential building containing not less than 2 dwelling units and not more than 9 such units, including but not limited to townhouses, duplexes, triplexes, perfect sixes, and cottage clusters. And then we all kind of know what mixed use development is, but the definition per the Connecticut General Statutes, it means a development containing both residential and non-residential uses in any single building. So the transit community middle housing development. Again, this is a slide that has the image provided from Congress for New Urbanism and the slide provided by CCAPA. Again, it's a residential building, as we noted, not containing not less than 2, but not more than 9 units. You can see kind of those examples of what they're kind of talking about. That cottage cord, side-by-side duplexes. It's that everything from a duplex up to 9 units. So this is kind of, there's some variation in there, and it'll be variation of styles of buildings that can go in. But again, this shall be allowed in our regulations. Next. Again, that kind of another view of it, so you can kind of see, what we're talking about. You have everything, this is kind of our gamut of housing. That is looked for everything from single family to mid-rise, dense apartment building, mixed use type of downtown development. So we're looking kind of at this middle. So this actually comes, the previous House bill really actually used the words missing middle or middle housing. Now we're using this transit housing. Same principles, same, it's a different name for the same type of units that we're looking at. Again, these middle from 2 to 9 units. So let me do that. So now, as part of that, we have to allow these by summary review. So summary review is it's able to be approved in accordance with the terms of the zoning regulation or regulations, including but not limited to requirements concerning setbacks, lot size, and building frontage. So that's applicable to the development. So we can still have requirements, and that's actually going to be a lot of the work. And this is figuring out what the requirements are in each one of these zones, because a lot of our zones have very different uses than them. We have smaller commercial zones that we're using, our normal business zone, that has, more of that neighborhood style development, a little something different, all the way up to PD, our planned development zone, which we have a lot of aerospace manufacturers. We have contractor sales and storage, we have contractors yards. There's a gamut of uses in there, everything from a quick service restaurant all the way to, H.O. Penn, who we have out there, who has a lot of equipment on site. There's variation. So thinking about how those residential units, how a two-family could fit into that zone, it's gonna be about figuring out those bulk requirements that we're also used to. Again, setbacks, buffers, kind of the issue that I see kind of when we're looking at this is typically the requirements that we've had for zoning regulations, when you have residential in a commercial zone, what you typically do is you require a commercial user to have a buffer between them and the residential. That is primarily how we do it here with different zoning districts. So if you're in the PD zone, or you're in the Business Berlin Turnpike zone, or in the industrial zone, you have specific requirements between you and a residential zone that's buffering, again, for those health safety issues. Sound is a big issue, especially around the Berlin Turnpike. Talking to many people who live there, around there, sound is one of those things that if you live near the Turnpike, it's something that is part of your lived experience. You kind of expect it. Now we're talking about residences within the Turnpike, which we have some. They're larger developments, and I will kind of get into that, what's permitted right now. But again, this is without a public hearing being held, without a variance, no special permit or special exception. So this is by summary review. So it's pretty much that site plan as of right style development. But again, determination, we can only have a determination that a site plan is in conformance with the regulations and that public health and safety will not be substantially impacted. So what does this mean for us? What does it mean for Newington? So again, zoning regulations will need to be adopted for the site plan criteria for transit community middle housing. Further clarification will be needed on the intent of the wording zoned for commercial development. As you say, again, what is permitted? It's on any lot zoned for commercial development. That is what the legislature put into the bill. And that is one of the items that has been identified by a lot of planners, by CCAPA, by CROG, as kind of that question of that needs to be defined. There will be, I think that they're in short session right now. If something comes out of this with revisions to this bill, we may see something, or maybe something we have to figure out. So this is something I think we're going to have to figure out as we move forward. If the legislature does change anything, we'll have to react to it. But the key thing is, this is on a shorter time clock for us. This needs to be done, I believe, by July 1st. So we have to get this done pretty much in June and get regulations adopted to have them in place. Because again, this is a shall allow, and you do not want to be in the situation where you have a shall allow in the statutes and then your regulations don't address it. Then someone comes in with an application and you're stuck in that middle going, well, they're permitted to do it. And now you're in kind of that no man's land. So we do need to get regulations in place by June to kind of meet that July 1st deadline. So our existing commercial zones. So right now I'm just looking again, we have to figure out what that zone for commercial development really means and what the intent of the legislature was. But looking at what we would consider our typical commercial zones are business zone, business town center, business Berlin Turnpike, plan development, and commercial development. Oops. So this is kind of what we allow housing now within these zones. So it's permitted in the business zone by special permit. Again, this is apartments on the second and third floor. So that's that classic mixed use that we're used to development. So we do allow mixed use development by special permit within our business zones. Within our business town center zone, we have multiple different categories of residential, each with different densities. But we have multifamily, we have apartments and business buildings similar to the business zone, which is that, mixed use. We have residential buildings for the elderly, which has a bonus, again, a higher density, and a bonus for affordable housing, again, with that higher density. In the planned development zone, we do, again, have apartment buildings. Again, they've recently been constructed, but those were by special permit and they required at least 5 acres. You can see that at the time. Likely, when you have those larger lot requirements, I think the vision for the planned development zone would be these larger buildings that have been built. Again, the Pike and Mill Yard are 2 big ones that have been built in the planned development zone right now. They are large parcels and they are large buildings, but with a larger parcel, you have more room to give a little bit of a buffer between you and the neighbor, to locate it in an area that's, consider what's around you and react to it. So that'll be something we'll have to think about on minimum lot sizes, just to make sure that something doesn't end up really crammed in right next to a detrimental use, like one of the manufacturing, like a contractor's yard. So those would be concerns that I would have for, a two-family being put in one of these commercial zones, or even, as you get a larger building, you do have a little more room, you kind of make it a little tighter, you can increase your setbacks. But that's going to be something that the commission's going to have to opine on, figure out as we rewrite these regulations. Where it's not permitted right now is the Business Berlin Turnpike and the commercial development zone. So this will be adding residential into these zones where it doesn't currently permit them. And this is kind of example, that business zone that I talked about, the apartments and business buildings. So these are Newington standards for that. Primarily, again, each apartment of unobstructed access to the outside. Number two is kind of that item that I find kind of very applicable in these commercial districts, especially along the Berlin Turnpike, is soundproofing. Now, this talks about soundproofing when you have those two uses above them. You can picture you have a noisy use below you, you have a restaurant, you have something like that. You want someone to have a decent quality of life above it and be able to sleep with a noise below. So we require that right now in mixed use buildings between the uses. One thing we'll have to consider is the impacts of the zone and the location where this is proposed. Again, there may be many locations where this is not an issue, or there could be a potential location where this would be an issue. Again, located right next to like a construction yard would be a big concern. Again, we have requirements for a land area per dwelling unit. And again, we'll have to revise this, number 4. When I get to this next section, we got to talk about parking. But we do have to look at our regulations and make sure that we're in line for the parking requirements. So this is the next section. So I don't know if you would like me to pause for any questions, Mr. Chairman, or just kind of keep going.
I have a question, Bob. This only applies to transit district, transit lines that go through, am I correct?
It does not. It applies everywhere. It has this name, but it is not linked to transit.
So if you were to, I'm just gonna use an example. Berlin Turnpike has a bus route. And you build something a mile away from it. These people are expected, if they don't have a vehicle, to walk a mile to this? Is this what we're saying?
So again, it's using the name, and I can see, yeah, that is kind of the thing that came up again, changing it from that middle housing to transit.
Right.
It's not specifically tied to transit. It uses the terminology, but it can go anywhere in the zone regardless of that. Now, where the bus lines come into play is when we're talking about parking and the parking assessment. So that's going to be, when a developer comes in and says, I want to build this, and they're trying to say, okay, here's my parking assessment. I can get into that when we do the parking, but that's going to be one of those things where, if it's over 16 units, I'm kind of going ahead on this one, that we can require minimums, the minimums we have now. If it's under 16, we can't require them. So let's, if you want to kind of go.
But no, the reason why I was asking that, because if something gets developed on a road, say for instance, like Payne Road, no sidewalks, okay? And these people have to transit from egress from here to there, they're gonna have to walk on a road, or somebody's gonna be on a hook to put sidewalks in. So that means the town would be on a hook to put the sidewalks in?
It's a good question. Again, we need to look at our criteria for these zones. Some of these, and I don't believe the PD has the specific provision that calls out sidewalks in it.
Yeah.
And that's why, a lot of development has happened in the PD zone without sidewalks in front of it,
Right.
because it is that, it's that classic car-driven, car-oriented development of saying, yeah, this is primarily everyone's driving here, even though we do have people walking.
Those are my serious questions. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a real big fan of people walking along the side of the highways, especially with what's happening today with people getting hit.
Mhm.
And yet, I feel as though we have some responsibility, whether it's a town or as a state, put sidewalks in to protect these people. So I'm looking at, and again, if we put a development, say like on middle of Stoddard Avenue or middle of Francis Avenue, wherever it is, sidewalk should be supplied, because you do have a lot of cars going, and speeding is an issue in this town as well as statewide. So I don't want to see the town on the hook to have start putting sidewalks. Because those become very expensive, we all know.
Yeah, again, it's gonna be part of the discussion, again, kind of what we've dealt with on applications too. When something comes in and doesn't have sidewalks and you say, okay, you need to build a sidewalk in front of yours, but there's no network and there's back and forth. And that's why that has been, a lot of developments haven't put in because there is none.
That's why we have sections where you have missing sidewalk because,
Right, but if I remember,
it just happens. People like, yeah, well, they didn't put theirs in, so they said, okay, you get a waiver.
if I remember, it was a couple of zoning boards ago. They took them out because we had so much segregated sidewalks. So maybe we need to look at putting that back in.
Yeah, and again, this is when we look at all the regulations to figure out what we need to do to kind of
Because we've got to find,
adapt.
we've got to find connectivity, and I don't believe the town should be responsible for putting in huge amounts of sidewalk. I could be wrong, but that's just my opinion. You see any other questions, commissioners? Commissioner Harpy?
Paul, what happens if we don't act on this? Suppose we get public input and our own conversations that this could easily get out of control. Just visually get out of control, like big cities suffered from a combination of these things. It looks like you have no zoning after a while. I mean, what's the blowback from the state? I mean,
Good question. I have not been in that situation before, but typically you get an application and then if you deny it, then you're not compliant with the regulations, you get into a legal action. And of course, if the statutes say you shall do this and you're not doing it.
so if this happens, say, so the chairman's example of the Pike, I mean, if there's no public hearing requirement and it has to be done, it has to be allowed, I think we got a different look at what Newington looks like very rapidly. And it just, and that's not I'm not condemning anybody that wants to live in one of those situations, but and it wouldn't, that's not the value that that's not a question for me, but this could easily become a big city look where, and I don't want to pick on certain cities, but we all know who they are. It looked like you wonder if there was ever any kind of logic to the layout of the areas, because if everything looks like downtown, you kind of lose the look of the town and view of.
And I think if we're
Maybe I'm
looking
being
at.
too dramatic about it. I could just see it getting out of control very
Yeah.
rapidly. I mean, I don't know.
And if we're looking at what these are, so it's 2 to 9. So we're not saying, the act does not say any residential is allowed by right, period. It's talking about 2 to 9. So it's not this is not someone who comes in with a, 150 unit building who says, just summer review, everything like that, not a problem. This is that 2 to 9 missing middle type of housing. There's going to be, again, that's when the devil's going to be in the details with the regulations and the bulk requirements that we put in place. Again, for those concerns, it's more, again, the protection of those residents who are going to be living in those 2 to 9 units. But, we're not talking about, this is not saying, you have to put in, 5-story, 200 unit apartment buildings based on summer review. It only applies to 2 to 9 units.
Because I just would be worried about the public areas on the Berlin Turnpike. Good luck to that. We already have the project completed recently on Cedar. And I saw a woman, I was going to the gym, she had a baby in the carriage and she was even off the lawn area in the road because of the weather conditions. I'll end it with this. My last, suppose we decide to do something over at the United Healthcare, all of the 40-something acres, and the council said they're going to buy this land for future development, and say that we put the predominant number of these units that you just discussed in that area. Does that satisfy the requirement, or it's not a unit goal?
Yeah, it's open. The unit goal will be in a part we weren't going to discuss tonight, the housing growth plans. That's where the goals are located in. This is specific, again, this is a zoning requirement and it applies universally to, again, lots that are zoned for commercial development. So again, that's that broad type of thing, but it does apply throughout. Again, when you have that commercial development, those commercial zones, it can go into those zones. So it applies throughout all of those zones,
So the burden of public safety, it falls on us.
especially when,
Yeah,
yes,
right.
when writing and crafting the regulations, that's what is paramount, is to review those public safety type of issues.
Thank you.
Chris Minor has his hand raised, Mr. Chairman.
Jaya had her hand.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I mean, I just was going to make the point that it was the missing middle thing. And I think if a developer is going to think about whether or not something they're going to get into is going to make sense for them financially to get either 2 to 9 units out of it. I don't, so I wouldn't, I think that's part of, maybe when we take a step back, we look at our own, what is really in our town, we could sort of try to almost, the way we do a visioning project with the Hartford Healthcare thing, we could maybe also try to use our imagination about where these opportunities could lie. We're not the developer, we're not the person making the, doing the, making that impact directly, but I think it wouldn't hurt to really look at these zones and see where the opportunities could be. For one thing, it would be probably beneficial to us to, like, I think what, the chairman was saying earlier, near transit, we always heard about the transit opportunities in Newington, and a lot of it was like where we could maybe one day have a train station.
Mhm.
And that would be a really good use of converting some commercial into residential, so.
Okay.
Yep.
Commissioner Minor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one quick question, Paul. Is any of this new legislation tied to our 10% threshold? Is that still tied to that, or is this separate to that?
Yep. So this is all completely separate from the 10% 830G requirements.
Okay. That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Minor. Any other commissioners have any questions?
Commissioner Woods has his hand.
Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Woods?
Yeah, there's no, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Paul, there's no language in there that mandates this or any percentage of these housing units to be affordable, correct? So they could be a market rate, they could be, or affordable. It's whatever the developer chooses to put there, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Woods. Anybody else? No? Okay,
All right, so now we'll get on to section 18. So that, again, we've talked about the housing specific element of it. Now we're gonna talk about parking for housing, for residential. So section 18, subsection 9, changes 8-2 of the state regulations that says the municipality that we shall not require a minimum number of off-street motor vehicle parking spaces for any residential development except as provided in section 19 of this act. So this is, again, it's in the act that we shall not require a minimum number of required parking spaces. Again, but section 19. So there are 2 specific things in section 19 that are the areas where you would be able to require. So again, section 19 highlighted some important parts of it, but again, effective July 1st, 2026, except as provided, again, it kind of leads you through, except as provided in subsections B and D of this section, no zoning enforcement officer, planning commission, zoning commission, or combined planning and zoning commission shall reject an application for any residential development solely on the basis that such development fails to conform with any requirements for off-street motor vehicle parking spaces, unless such officer or commission finds that a lack of such parking spaces will have a specific adverse impact on public health and safety that cannot be mitigated through approval conditions that have no substantial adverse impact on the viability of such development. So that's a mouthful. So we'll talk about these 2 subsections B and D. So these are the 2 exceptions. Again, we had 18 that said you can't require it for any, other than that's required in 19. And now we have the subsections B and D. So subsection B, again, the municipality, we may require a minimum number of parking spaces for a residential development that contains more than 16 dwelling units. So in that scenario, we can have parking requirements. They cannot be more than what we have right now. The 1 for a 1-bedroom or a studio and the 2 for a 2-bedroom plus. So that has stayed. Again, that was part of the last legislative push that that Newington chose not to opt out of and adopted. Now that is the standard of 1 space for 1-bedroom and studios and 2 spaces. But in this situation where we can require them, we have to allow the proposed developer to submit a parking needs assessment. And, we shall condition the approval of such development on the construction of off-street parking spaces, not exceeding either what's in that assessment or 1 space, as I noted. So we pretty much have that floor of the 1 or 2 spaces that we have now, but it does give the developer an opportunity to submit a parking needs assessment. And I'll kind of get into what that parking needs assessment in 2 more slides. And again, it's whichever is less. So subsection D, there's a lot here. I encourage you to look at this subsection. But again, this is another area that the town will have an opportunity to require, and this is in the case of fewer than 16 dwelling units, where the municipality can adopt parking requirements. We would have to establish conservation and traffic mitigation districts. So this will be a discussion of where these could go in town. The key thing is we can't have, no such district shall be larger than 4% of the municipality's land area. We have to submit them to OPM. They may be contiguous, they can be separate. And even in this case of the less than 16, where we have a parking, again, a traffic mitigation district, conservation mitigation district, again, we shall allow the proposed developer of such development to submit that parking needs assessment that conforms with the requirements of that subsection C. So again, we have 2 cases where we can. Over 16, you can have requirements, but they can do a parking assessment. Under 16, only in these mitigation districts can you require it, and then they still have the opportunity to provide that parking assessment. So we'll kind of go into what that parking assessment is. So a parking needs assessment is, again, it's paid for by the developer and includes analysis of available and existing public and private parking that may be used by residents of the proposed development, public transportation options that may be used by residents of the proposed development that mitigate the need for off-street parking, projected future needs for off-street parking for such proposed development, and any relevant local traffic, parking, or safety study. So this is, again, we have these 2 circumstances where you can require minimums, but this parking needs assessment is the developer will have the opportunity to submit one of these if they choose to do so. Again, this is kind of where the public, where it comes into is if this is right next to a bus stop, a train, a future train station, something like that, that yes, I think, there could be opportunities there if it's in an area that's completely divorced from public transit, no connectivity to it. A parking needs assessment wouldn't necessarily be able to show that, yeah, there's a bus stop, again, 1 mile away, but there's no way to get there. So that would be, a review of that parking needs assessment. So that's kind of where we are with parking. Go to the next slide. So what does this mean for us? What does this mean for Newington? So for housing developments, more than 16 units, we can require 1 space for a studio and 1 bedroom, and 2 spaces for 2 bedrooms or more. Fewer 16 units, parking minimums can only be required in the conservation and traffic mitigation districts, and the developer is able to submit a parking needs assessment to establish their parking requirement. So we will need to look at this parking needs assessment and develop criteria for it. Again, the state has specific criteria in the act, and we should discuss those. What do those mean to us here? Is there any additional kind of requirements? We don't want to go, so far afield, because the state has defined what the parking needs assessment is and the elements that it's required to have. We should have those elements spelled out in our zoning regulations as well. Again, in that parking needs assessment section that we'll have to create. We'll do that, and we'll have to determine if and when a lack of parking will impact public health and safety. That it will be an interesting question. That'll be a question we'll be working with the local traffic official authority on that. But I think that'll be a question. How do we define that? The public health and safety, but nothing in this act requires that you it doesn't have a requirement that the municipality is required to provide on-street parking. So that's something to remember, is like, this is all about on-site parking for the development. There's nothing that says that you have to say, okay, if they say, okay, we have an area, it's not marked as no parking, we're gonna use the street, even though it's an area that really doesn't, we don't have on-street park, it's not normally used. We do not have to permit on-street parking as part of one of these developments for a developer to come and say, well, I'm just gonna build this, I have a bunch of spaces in front of me, I'll use those. That's not how this is envisioned. This is on-site parking for the development itself. And, development review may require independent parking needs analysis on a site-by-site basis. So this is gonna be something that is either on staff, or if we require additional review for a consultant on call to review some of these, where if there is a question, if it seems like doesn't quite add up, that we would have to do a third-party review to kind of figure out, does this make sense? So that's kind of looking at the parking section of it.
Steve Woods does have his hand raised.
I'm sorry?
I said Steve Woods has his hand
Okay,
raised.
Commissioner Woods?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Paul, is the parking separate from House Bill 8002 or part of it?
Part of it.
Then didn't we start off though that 8002 was between 2 and 9 units?
Yes, so this is,
How do you tie that together? Because now we're talking, more than 60 units, which 8002 really isn't talking about that, but now it is when it comes to parking?
yes, yeah, so it treats the housing section, that's again, a separate section where it just talks about that middle housing and where it shall be allowed. And then a completely separate section regarding parking. So this is again, parking for residential uses, but they are completely separate sections, but all within, I think there's 47 sections in this bill, in the act.
So if someone came to us with a zoning application, 50 units, 45 units, this parking piece of it would apply to it. That's what you're telling us, correct?
Yes, and in that case, say those amount of units, that's above 16,
Yeah.
so we can have those minimums, but then they have the opportunity to submit that parking needs assessment. And we have to, it's not even, they have that opportunity, they have the right to submit that parking needs assessment.
They don't make it easy, do they? As far as trying to understand all this.
Nope, there's a lot to this, and a lot of the planners are figuring it out. And again, we have, I plan to be working internally, working with CROG, working with planners around the area. This is going to require a community effort to get through this legislation and figure out regulations that are best for Newington for us.
Yeah, with the drop dead date of July 1. Good luck.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Steve. Any other questions? Okay,
So I think there's one last thing that I have on here, and it's just kind of other stuff. So there's a lot in this bill. So here's the other zoning changes. These ones are not as dramatic, but I wanted to kind of make you aware of them. Zoning for manufactured homes, section 18. There was, again, not treating mobile homes differently than a single family residence. It used to have a 22-foot wide requirement. That's been stripped out of it. So again, mobile homes are not treated differently than single family residences as a singular unit manufactured homes. The protest petition, section 24. This was in the last bill, it survived and it continued and got adopted in this bill as well. So the protest petition used to be 20% of landowners within either the boundaries of or within 500 feet. Now it's 50% of the owners, but also on top of that, it used to require a 2/3 majority to approve if you had a protest petition. Now it's a majority vote. So while you have a petition submitted, it really follows the normal process at this point because you would require a majority vote, whether you approved it with or without a protest. So that is in this bill, where it kind of has changed that to now it's a majority vote no matter what. And then again, the ban on hostile architecture, this shouldn't really affect this commission. It's something that's out there. It's something that, if a site plan does show up in front of us, and it has certain elements to it. Again, there is a ban on hostile architecture as part of this in section 26. That's your typical creating benches so someone can't lay down, putting spikes on top of sitting walls, doing things like that. That would be viewed as hostile architecture. I think, is that the last slide I have, I believe?
It is.
So, yep, so that's the last slide. There's a lot of elements, in this House bill. And there's the housing growth plan as well. Again, I do not plan to get into detail about that tonight, but the main thing for that is to consider is OPM, we will not have the, housing growth targets to the Council of Governments until, they're due December 1st, 2026. So OPM has until December 1st, 2026 to submit these to the Council of Governments. Then the COGS have, I believe, 6 months to review them, work with and figure out the allocation for the towns. And the towns have 30 days after that, to either accept or go our own path. I plan to do a separate presentation on this in the future, but you can definitely take a look at these, in there. I provided a link to it. Again, it's 100 and some pages. It's a lot to read. But I believe this is section 5 and section 6, and then there's more continued in section 7 that talks about these housing growth plans. I plan to get, again, to give a presentation at a later date, but just to give people the concept of time in this, that OPM has until December 1st, 2026 to do their part before it's handed to the COGS, goes to the COGS. I plan on working with our Council of Governments through this process. Again, we don't want to wait till the end. We want to be at the table discussing how these things are calculated, how it impacts communities, pros, cons. I definitely want to be there as part of that. So when we get a number, it's not a surprise. The last thing I would want is just be like, here's your number, you have 30 days. So that'll be incumbent upon me, my office, to be there at those meetings and participate, and I plan to do so. So that's just give you the idea. I know there's questions out there in the community about what these are, but there is time on this. Unlike the zoning regulations with July 1st, that we have far less time on and do need to get onto that.
Do you have a timetable, Paul, for when we're gonna start reviewing those regulations?
So this again adds another layer on top of that. Unfortunately, because of the due date, I think this will have to be done first, and then we'll have to go into our rewrite, get this section done. It is complicated in that way. I do not like, constantly doing multiple different revisions piecemeal. But just because of the timetable, I think we're gonna be in this first and then work on, again, we have this, we have the town center, and then we have the entirety of the zoning regulations. So there's gonna be a lot to work on.
Plus whatever applications come in.
Yeah, yeah, plus, normal business.
Paul?
Well, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Commissioner Harvey.
Paul, so are you saying under our housing plan, we would have to fold this in?
So our housing plan, so 830J, which was the requirement for the former affordable housing plan, that's repealed. So this replaces, this housing growth plan replaces, and is a new plan, but we do not have to update ours, which would have been due in May of this year. But again, it was repealed as part of this act. 830J plans are no longer required, but we have this new housing growth plan.
I would think on these duplexes or triplexes or whatever you want to call them, the 2 to 9 units, to do one on it's got to be a little developer. I mean, the guy's got to not even be in the game. The larger units I could see because they can make the profits, all about profits to them. But on a public safety issue, the fire department's already having issues of things that come before us of how they're going to get the fire truck in. And stay away from backing up and things like that aren't traditional. So CROG's just gonna roll over kind of like on this. They're not gonna push back on the legislature to get some clarity or.
Well, I think as part of the process.
Thing that bothers me, I went down to testify one day, never got on. And the guy from Bridgeport, state rep from Bridgeport said to me, well, we've had all these discussed before. I said, well, you haven't had them discussed as one bill, the super bill. I said, you've talked about them in the past, but that doesn't give anybody a decent level of input. But I don't see how this helps the homeless either. I mean, they've run out of housing. The reason you don't see people all over the streets in Hartford and Bridgeport and New Britain is because they were able to put them in a stabilized situation. Well, the ones that will stay in a building.
Yeah, and I think.
But I don't see this as helping them at all, even on the smaller units. I worked with them when I was at Fort Polk, and This isn't an answer for those people.
Yeah, and they did remove, again, the last, 5002 had that in its title. This is an act for housing growth. So again, it is reframed, more onto the line of like what the plan is rather, I think you did have comments on the last time too, specifically the same ones about 5002 about what it did and what it didn't do. But there are some reality checks kind of in here as well to think about. Because we noticed, as you said, the 2 to 9 units might not be profitable. The prime real estate where our quick service restaurants are right on the Berlin Turnpike might be nowhere near feasible for a developer to put in a 2-family. Like it's not.
Yeah.
So there are some reality-based things about the actual market itself, about developers. They are likely to build parking, because they have to lease it. Now, we do have to watch out for the one-offs and people who are, there's always unique circumstances that happen with applications. But in general, people are going to want parking where they live. They're not going to choose to live there if there's nowhere to put their car, if they can't get where they need to go and they're dependent upon their car. So there's a little bit of, what is in this bill about, and what is this act about what we have to allow. But then there's the market realities too of what will be built. Again, we will not know until it's tested. But then that's authoring the regulations, doing the best we can to look at all these public healthy and safety issues, address what we can, and then we will see, based upon first contact with the first application that comes in under it, how that goes. But we have a little time, not as much as I would like, but a little time to work through this.
Well, you set the schedule, Paul, on this, and we'll get moving on it.
Yep.
The other thing I wanted to ask you, I'm sorry, is there any other questions? No. The other thing I want to ask you, Paul, and we have discussed this before, and I know Eric has too, is that, we changed some zones, and we're having a lot of petitions going before the zoning board of appeals. And I know why we wanted to rewrite that one also, because it's, some of these houses that are around 60-foot lots have a little bit of room to put an addition on, and yet our requirements don't allow that. So I'd like to try to get that also incorporated while we're doing this. I think there was an R10
Yeah, I think
or R7, I can't remember now.
the one thing that's going to be, I think, a little difficult on the staff end of this one is if we start incorporating too many things into it, we might not finish in time. So that's my concern.
No, I meant, I'd like to look at this at the same time, but let's get this is a priority.
Mhm.
But
Yes.
maybe look at that next. Because we do have, and I don't, Eric, how many fields you get a month roughly?
We get a lot of inquiries, obviously, and I go through the process with them, and some people choose to other options rather than
Okay,
take a chance with the zoning board of appeals because I do require an updated survey. That's an inherent out-of-pocket cost as well.
Yeah.
And so people make decisions. Sometimes we come forward with an application, sometimes not.
well, I'd like to, at some point, clean that up too.
Mhm.
Okay, any other questions? All right, you all set, Paul?
Yep.
Okay. There's no old business.
Yep, so old business was, again, the public hearing is open on
Right.
application TPZ 2528, so it cannot be acted upon.
Petitions for scheduling, anything?
None.
None, okay. Non-planners report.
I don't have much extra prepared tonight unless there's any questions for me, but I've kind of concentrated on the housing bill.
Current land use, I guess we're all set. Any communications from CROG, the letters are here. Okay, second round of public participation. Maybe we should come up and speak for the public.
Someone online has their hand raised.
Okay.
Go ahead, you can speak.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let's do this.
Hi, Rose Lyons, 46 Elton Drive. Thank you for the presentation, Paul. I've been watching bits and pieces on CTN when they've had some neighborhood meetings and such regarding these housing bills. Well, I appreciate the fact that something has to be done about housing. It really is bothersome to me that this gets put through and it doesn't seem as though the planners have much input. They just are told what they need to do and they have to get it done. Would be nice if the legislators came out here like they've gone to other towns. They may have been here and I didn't know about it, but I think it's something that Newington really needs to hear more from them, what their ideas are, and I don't know, maybe it'll start an uprising. Forget that, take that back, retract my statement. But in any case, budget is coming up, and I'm serious about this. I hope that when you present your budget, that there's some provisions for help for your office. I just don't know how you guys do it on a regular basis. And with all this being mandated by the state and the time frame and everything else, I sure do hope that you've got some help to come in and with you. And I hope that the other planners are getting together and working on it. It would be nice if the legislators got together with the planners before they do this, but I don't think that's the way government works these days. In any case, good luck with it. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
No one online has their hand raised, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. Please state your name and address for the record.
Gail Madraco, 21 Isabel Terrace. I guess I can just ask or throw some questions out. I know it's not a dialogue, but I find it interesting that, or I think the state intentionally causes confusion. I mean, I was confused as Chairman Sobieski was about transit, middle housing as opposed to transit-oriented development, whatever. And it's, I mean, I think they do anything they can to kind of mix the water so people just get lost and just give up. But in any event, when you were showing the pictures of the middle, what the heck do they call it? The middle housing, yeah, community middle housing, the 2 to 9 units. There were, you know, it looked like some nice, I don't, you could have little developments of like 4-unit, you know, structure, a 4-unit structure, a 4-unit structure, a 4-unit structure. So if a developer comes along with on a piece of commercial property and puts a 4-unit, a 4-unit, a 4-unit, a 4-unit, then even though in total it's more than 16, but each individual structure is less than 9, we wouldn't be able to put any parking requirements in, I'm assuming, because of, they can, you know, kind of play around with that. So that's something that maybe you might want to think about and find how you're going to handle that. Because in that instance, it would be profitable to a developer. I could see where a nice big piece of commercial property, you could put in up little buildings with 4 units each and make some money off of it. I also find it interesting, about the hostile architecture, because, you know, I ride my bike on the busway, whatever, and all the benches, on the busway are hostile architecture. So the state should start practicing maybe sometimes what they preach. And one other question, and it must be, maybe it's with the housing growth numbers that are going to be coming out, but wasn't there an option for a town to either be a participant in a regional plan versus an independent plan? And is there any thought on how Newington is going to be going forward, rather participating regionally or doing our own thing? I'm just curious about that. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak?
No one online has their hand raised.
Okay, thank you. Remarks by commissioners. Any remarks? No? All right, my closing remarks is thank everybody for showing up tonight. I appreciate all your input. I'm sure Paul will be working on this. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Have a good night, everybody.
Well.